Hello everybody and welcome back to the tasting room. Well, it's about that time again. I've accumulated a whole bunch of empty bottles for you and I'm going to share them all with you now in an empties video. Enjoy! So we'll go ahead and get the first set of empty bottles up here, but before I do, please make sure you hit that little thumbs up, that little like button down at the bottom below your video there. Really does help out my channel, helps to push it out to more people who like this kind of content. So if you could do that for me, I would really appreciate it. Alright, let's go ahead and get the first set up here. There we go. Yes, what empties video would be complete without a few bottles of very old Barton. You know, for long-time viewers of my channel, you know that is one constant standby with me is my very old Barton. It's the price point is right. It's a good quality bourbon. And they have a few different varieties too. I still maintain that they get better with proof. We've got a couple empty bottles here of the 86 proof. That's the label with the green stripe on the, well, not the bottom, but you know. And one bottle of the 100 proof, which is my personal favorite. They do make an 80, an 86, a 90, and a 100. So that is, that's very old Barton. Next up we have a bottle of Corner Creek. So this, I'm not entirely sure who makes this one. But yeah, I found this one a number of years ago, and it's actually a pretty solid bourbon. It's 44% alcohol, 88 proof. And yeah, I don't know what else to say about it. I mean, I reviewed it very early on, and I've gone through a couple of bottles in the last number of years. So I mean, it's not something that I'm constantly going out to repurchase and repurchase and repurchase like like a couple of the old standbys in my collection. But I think I bought this bottle on my last trip to Kentucky when I was just looking for a good solid bourbon to drink around the campfire, and it works. Speaking of standbys, we've got the Willett Estate Rye, and this is the 4-year. I do believe they make a 10-year too, but I've never been able to get my hands on a bottle. But I've gone through quite a few bottles of the 4-year, and I do have another bottle in my collection too that I've already opened. Yeah, I have a hard time finding this anywhere other than the Willett Distillery. So every time I go down to Kentucky, I do pick up a bottle or two just because I love it so much. This is definitely top 5 for my favorite ryes, if not my favorite rye. But while we're on the subject of delicious rye whiskeys, you can't talk about good rye without talking about Whistlepig. So this one here is from their Old World collection. And they do a ton of different variants on rye whiskey. This one, so for this Old World series, they wrote in at the bottom they have 3 different types of casks, and you have to be really careful looking for the ones that how do I want to say this? Some of them will have 60% Madeira and 40% port. Some of them had all 3. This one here was finished in 100% French Sauternes, and that is it's a very sweet white fortified wine, French Sauterne. But yeah, 90 proof, 45% alcohol, and yeah, this was a very delicious rye. I love a good cask finished rye. I mean, obviously he was aged in probably oak, but then finished in a fortified wine. Always adds a nice sweeter touch. Kind of takes the edge off the rye bite a little bit. Just adds another dimension of flavor. I like that. Boy, next up, I must have been bored one night. I finally finished this long-standing bottle of the Glen Liam 12-year-old. Nothing against Glenlivet as a producer of Scotch whiskey, but it's just a little boring for me. I don't know. I mean, I've had hundreds of different whiskeys at this point, and this is, you know, probably one of the first ones that I ever tried. And you know, if you're just starting out and you just kind of want to explore Scotch whiskey and find out what it's all about, I mean, you know, something like this, or a Macallan, or just your standard run-of-the-mill Glenfiddich, Glenmorangie. I mean, no, that's where you start, but then you graduate on from there. I mean, so yeah, I mean, this is one of the places I started, and I mean, it's taken me a whole lot of years to finally finish this bottle. All right, next we have kind of an odd one here. This is an Australian whiskey. It's called Starward Twofold. It's a double grain whiskey. I believe it was a wheat and malted barley, and yes, that is absolutely correct. And it is finished in Australian red wine barrels. So yeah, this was an odd one because, I mean, wheat and malted barley as the grain, I mean, it's a very muted grain profile or mash profile in my opinion. When you go for like a bourbon, that's mainly corn. I mean, it's got a certain flavor and it adds a whole bunch of sweetness. A lot of times the secondary grain in a bourbon is going to be rye. That adds a little bit of fruity, a whole lot of spice. You know, when you hear terms like wheated bourbon, I mean that's where they use wheat as that secondary grain. And to me, the main reason to do that is to use the wheat instead of the rye is just to kind of allow some more of that sweetness from the corn to shine through. And then for a bourbon, of course, they're only using the malted barley for the enzymes. It's usually, you know, about 12-15% or something in the mash bill. So this one here is just wheat and malted barley. So not a whole lot of character this one is getting from the grain, which means they're relying mainly on the cask finishing for the flavor. You know, and this one being finished in Australian red wine barrels. You know, it's been a while since I finished this bottle, but I mean I do remember it picking up some of those red wine type of notes, you know, and that's exactly what you would expect. You know, this one here, watered down to 40%. Would I buy it again? Probably not. It was unique. It was fun to try. But I feel like I'm either going to have to speed up here or break this into two videos, and we've got a lot to get through still. All right, next one here, Uncle Nearest, 1856. This is a Tennessee whiskey. The main difference between a bourbon and a Tennessee whiskey is a Tennessee whiskey is maple charcoal filtered, and in a bourbon, you're not flavoring it with anything but the oak cask. So this is still aged in charred oak barrels, but you know, as a Tennessee whiskey, it's maple filtered, and that adds a different flavor, a little bit more sweetness. Anyway, I digress. The story behind Uncle Nearest is that this Uncle Nearest guy was the guy who taught Jack Daniels how to make whiskey. You've heard of him, right? Anyway, this was bottled at 100 proof. It was a pretty good whiskey. I mean, I'm not big on Tennessee whiskey myself. I mean, I'll drink it if it's a good one. I like it, but just not the first thing that I'm looking for when I go into the liquor store. But this was a good one. I like this one. This was recommended to me by a friend who typically only drinks Scotch and is just dipping his toe into bourbon. Never really cared for bourbon because it was too sweet for him, you know, which is why it was really odd when he tried to turn me onto this one here, because this was a whole lot sweeter than a normal bourbon. Speaking of not a bourbon and of Jack Daniels, I have a Jack Daniel's Single Barrel Rye. This one was really weird. It was a lot sweeter than I would typically expect a rye to be, and the main note in this one, both on the nose and on the palate, was bananas for me. So a very tropical kind of a whiskey, but I had no trouble finishing the bottle. I mean, it was tasty. It was just unique and not at all what I was expecting. All right, next, if you were one of the brave ones who suffered all the way through the video that I did with my buddy Sheldon on the side by side with the Mitchell & Son Spot Series whiskeys, you know that I've finished the Yellow Spot finally. So it took me about 4 or 5 years to finish this bottle. The Green Spot, I've gone through a number of bottles of. That's the slightly younger version of this, and a whole lot cheaper version of this. And in my opinion, the Green Spot is much better. This one was kind of expensive. It's the 12-year-old version, and it just wasn't that good. You know, I can't recommend this that anyone go buy the Yellow Spot. I'm not going to buy it again. I did, however, buy the Red Spot, the 15-year, and that one was delicious. So, not sure what they're doing to this Yellow Spot here, but I wasn't a fan. I mean, it was not like it was not drinkable, but I mean, for a $99 price tag, I was expecting a lot more. Okay, next we have another Irish whiskey. This is the Tealing Single Pot Still. Can't remember what I rated this one. This one was okay. I really do like the Tealing Irish whiskeys, though my favorite is the single malt. So if you're looking for a good Irish whiskey and you want to try Tealing, start with the single malt, because that one is really good. This one was good too. You know, don't get me wrong, but it just wasn't on the same level. I think the single malt is cask finished. I'm not sure this one is. And for me, typically an Irish whiskey needs a little bit of that cask finishing just to give it a little more flavor. I mean, it's always triple distilled, so you're really, in my opinion, losing some of that flavor of the grain. But yeah, that said, I haven't had a bad whiskey from Tealing, so whatever your pocketbook can handle. I mean, I think the single malt is the most expensive one, but worth it in my opinion. All right, in the best bang for your budget category, we've got a Wathen's Single Barrel. This is a bourbon, Kentucky Straight Bourbon whiskey. I think it was about $50, and that is a darn good price for a single barrel whiskey, and it was good. This one was really good. It's bottled at 47% alcohol, 94 proof. I can absolutely see myself repurchasing this one. I want to say this is probably the second bottle that I've had. So yeah. Also from the budget category, and not exactly the best bang for your budget, we've got Rebel Yell. So this one, Rebel Yell here, is made by the Lux Row Distillery, if I'm not mistaken. Same place that distills Blood Oath. I've done a Blood Oath in the past, and that one's pretty good. But this Rebel Yell did not have me crying more. That's for sure. Bottled at 40% alcohol, 80 proof. If I remember correctly, it was quite a bit watery, and yeah, just not much to it. I mean, the balance of this bottle went into a cocktail. It needed to be a little heavy-handed on it to remind me it was there, but I won't be buying that one again. Sorry. They can't all be winners. And on that note, we have a big old bottle of the Mortlock Rare Old Actually, it's a normal size bottle, just in a big old box. Boy, I forget what I paid for this one. I'm sure in the actual review, I've got it. I made mention of it, but it wasn't cheap. It was one of those that was, behind glass, and it was okay. I was not thrilled about the whiskey for the price tag. I mean, the whiskey on its own was, I don't remember what I rated it, but I want to say it was low to mid 80s. I mean, again, it wasn't bad, but for the price tag, and I know we've talked about on this channel before that, price doesn't always equal quality, but I don't know. For this one here, to quote Jim Murray, not rare enough or old enough. Sorry. Alright, next up, back to the ryes, we've got Rabbit Hole Rye here. So this one here I purchased when they first started selling Rabbit Hole, and that was, I think, a couple of years ago at this point. This was I think this was a 2-year-old rye, and I remember thinking at the time that it had good bones, and I wished that it had spent a little bit more time in the barrel. Now, that said, they were a brand new distillery and just trying to get some of their product out to the shelves, generating some capital, so I get that. Rabbit Hole in general is priced a little high, but I think in the coming years they're going to do some pretty good things. And I've already had their rye barrel finished gin. I do like that quite a bit. And I know they have a couple of bourbons out there. They have a cask finished bourbon that I haven't tried yet, just because the price point is just a little bit too up there for me to take a chance on. But yeah, and I don't know what they're aging their ryes at now, if they're still at 2 years or if they bumped it up a little bit. I'd have to do a little bit of research. But yeah, if they ever came out with like a 4-year rye or something, I'd jump all over it. Good stuff. We are nearing the end, folks. 5 bottles to go. All right, I've got here a bottle of Maker's Mark Private Select. This was the So this is this Private Select here. This is the series where they'll take their normal Maker's Mark spirit and select 10 oak staves to enter into the barrel and age it for an additional, I forget how long, maybe 9 weeks, 6 to 9 weeks, something like that. And they always put what the oak finishing staves are in the on the back here. And they always add up to 10. They've got the Baked American Pure, the Seared French Cuvée, Maker's 46, Roasted French Mocha, and Toasted French Spice. And this one here from Bill Samuels Jr. was the most unimaginative one. This was 10 staves of Maker's 46. That were entered into this barrel and aged for an additional amount of time, and it was good. Maker's Mark is a wheated bourbon. They use especially a red winter wheat, and I don't know what it is about that grain, but to me it has a bit more of a kick than than a normal wheated bourbon. So I've always liked Maker's Mark. I think they make a very good product. Speaking of which, if you do like Maker's Mark, you can't go wrong with the cask strength. It's just your normal run-of-the-mill Maker's Mark, but they don't water it down to 80 or 90 or whatever they end up bottling Maker's Mark at. I'm assuming the normal Maker's Mark is bottled at 80 proof because it is. Let's face it. It's a household name. It's mass produced, You know, even if it is only at that one distillery in Kentucky. But this one here, like I said, their cask strength. This particular bottle was bottled at 110.7 proof, and if you can find it at the right price, you can't go wrong with this one. I mean, it just packs a whole bunch of flavor. Very, very delicious. Next up is Michter's Sour Mash. I've gone through a number of bottles of Michter's Sour Mash in the past. This one's bottled at 43% alcohol or 86 proof. It's got a good, tasty flavor profile. Price point has increased over the years. I mean, it used to be you could find this one for $35, $40, and it kind of climbed up over $50. It's starting to come down a little bit too. I want to say I've just seen it recently for $45, so I may go ahead and pick up another bottle one of these days. But yeah, I mean, in the $40 price range, it's fantastic. In the $50 price range, it's decent. But a good daily drinker here. All right, next one up is an Issac Bowman. This is a port barrel finished, bottled at 92 proof. I actually turned my mother onto this one. She really likes her finished bourbons. But yeah, this one here, port barrel finished, did pick up quite a bit of flavor from the port barrel, and they didn't skimp out by watering it down to 80 proof. So you got to respect that. Yeah, very tasty. If you can find this for right price, definitely worth trying. I would repurchase. We've made it to the end, folks. One last bottle here. This is the only one that is not a whiskey, and I just realized that. No gin this time around. It's been cold here in Chicagoland. You know, I don't typically want gin when it's cold. This is a cognac, Pierre Ferran. This is Formula 1840, or I think that's just kind of their original. You know, it's not the Ombre, it's not the Reserve. This is just their normal run of the mill, and it's good. You know, Pierre Ferran makes some very good cognac. It is, and I didn't even actually try it until a couple of years ago when my buddy turned me on to it. But you know, for me, I was typically drinking like the Remy Martin VSOP, the XO around Christmas time. You know, when you save your pennies. But yeah, I've had very good luck with this brand. This is very good cognac. And that'll do it, folks. I could finally get all of these bottles out to the recycle bin. So thanks for sticking with me for that. If you stuck around to the end, bravo. I wasn't sure I was going to make it for a while there. Anyway, if you like these types of videos, hit that like button, leave a comment. If you're not already a member to my channel, what are you doing? Go ahead and hit that button and subscribe. And then after you do, make sure you ding that little bell next to the subscribe button to make sure you get notifications of new videos that come out. New videos come out on the weekends, and I would hate for you to miss one, so go ahead and do that for me, and I will see you again next week, right here on The Tasting Room.